Hello folks, my name is Mark, this is Why I Hate the World. How you guys doing? This is about whitewashing. So, I did a video review of the Ghost in the Shell movie a little while ago, and some of the feedback I got from friends was that I didn't talk about very much the whitewashing issue, where Scarlett Johansson was cast as the main character, who in the manga and in the anime is Asian, right? I didn't really talk about that. And, you know, as someone who's not exactly white myself, you know, I'm actually part Asian. I mean, I generally pass for a white person. You know, I can see this from different perspectives, right? And it seems to me that, you know, people only really seem to notice whitewashing in a movie when the movie sucks, right? When the actor that is playing the part is, like, horrible at it. You know what I mean? Now, it's pretty obvious that, you know, whitewashing is a problem because people get mad at it, you know, because they say, well, it keeps down minority actors, you know, actors who are Asian, actors who are you know, of Latino, that kind of thing. It removes opportunities for them to, you know, be in starring roles, right? And that's definitely true. You know, it seems like all of the main, you know, starring roles in movies out there and that get made by Hollywood are, you know, I'd say 80% white people. You know, maybe more than that, maybe 90%, right? That's definitely a problem, and I can understand as someone who was, say, a struggling Asian actor or something like that, that you might be a little mad when you see a role that should be an Asian person go to someone who is an Asian. You may feel like, hey, I'm getting shafted here, and I could totally get that, you know. And it seems like the further back in time you go, the worse this problem was. It's getting a lot better, you know. I mean, but back in the day, it was really bad, you know. Back in the 20s and 30s, you know, you'd have people in straight up blackface. You know what I mean? Like, you'd see that kind of, like, when they were casting a character who was African American, it would just be a white guy with makeup on. And that's, like, messed up. I mean, that went all the way to the 60s, where there was a version of Othello, where I can't remember the actor's name, but, you know, it had the main character in blackface, which is like, damn, you'd never see that kind of thing today. You know, but it still happens a lot with other characters who are other minorities. A lot of the examples I'm probably going to list come from the sci-fi fantasy genres because that's what I watch. You know, I got a bunch of examples written down here, but those are the kinds of movies I'm into. But it does happen a lot, you know. But I would submit to you that, you know, it's mainly the shitty movies where people complain, right? So, for example, the Doctor Strange movie that came out is the Ancient One is played by Tilda Swinton, and she's you know, the Ancient One in the comics is an Asian man, whereas she is a white woman. You know, I think she pulls it off pretty well, but what are you gonna do? That ridiculous Dragon Ball Evolution movie that came out, Goku was a white man in that movie, right? Which, yeah, okay, Goku's an alien, so I guess that's kind of up in the air for interpretation, but, you know, I guess he's supposed to be a Japanese alien, I don't know. The last Airbender movie that came out was that, if you haven't seen that horrible piece of shit, then don't. It sucks, right? But all of the cast has been whitewashed in that movie. They're all basically played by people of other races because all of the characters are supposed to be Asian. But, for example, the good characters in this movie are all played by white people, when the villains are played by Indians, that is, people from India, you know. So it's like Prince Zuko, and he's like Indian, he has dark skin. Right, whereas, like, you know, Aang and Korra, or what's her name, Aang and the waterbender lady, they're all like white people. And it's like, there you go, there's a perfect example of whitewashing. And not only that, but it's like using the tone of someone's skin to, like, you know, connotate if they're like a hero or villain. It's like, that's, you know, that's like, God, that's fucking racist. Anyway, Something else I notice is that anytime you see a depiction of Jesus in a movie, he's always played by a white guy, you know, which is like, in real life, if they're really, you know, if a Jesus really existed, which I'm not saying if he did or didn't, he would be of, you know, the same appearance as people in the Middle East, you know, dark skin, right, black hair, right, dark brown hair, black hair, dark skin. He wouldn't be like, you know, William Dafoe, like in The Last Temptation of Christ, or whatever the guy's name was in Jesus Christ Superstar. He wouldn't be that. But I said before that I think people only really notice whitewashing when the actor is bad or when the movie is bad, right? And because you never see people complaining about, you know, when the actor does a great performance, people don't complain. You know, for example, The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, which is generally accepted to be the best Star Trek movie by fans, at least, right? The character Khan Noonan Singh or whatever is supposed to be Indian, right? But he's played by Ricardo Montalban. So, you know, nobody complained about that. Is it because Ricardo Montalban is like, he's actually of Mexican descent? So does that mean that he's a minority, so it's okay? You know, or what? I don't know about that. Scarface is a good example. Al Pacino is not Cuban, right? But he plays this Cuban drug lord. And Scarface is like a classic. You know, I don't think you're going to find very many people out there that think that movie is bad, right? And you never see this movie come up when it comes to discussions of whitewashing. It's like, you know, like no one's complaining about that. I mean, it's like, I don't know. Another example is Argo, which is the main character in Argo is Tony Menendez, right? And in real life, Tony Menendez is half Mexican, whereas Ben Affleck is not half Mexican, right? But, you know, that movie got like Academy Awards. You know what I mean? It like won Best Picture and all that. So where are the people complaining about, you know? And that kind of brings up another point. So the character in real life, Tony Mendez is half Mexican. Does that mean that you have to get an actor who's actually half Mexican in order to play him for it to not be whitewashing, you know? So does that mean that someone who's like fully Mexican could play him and then like pretend to be half white? Does it work that way, you know? Another example of this is like, you know, Johnny Depp played Tonto in the Lone Ranger movie, right? Well, Johnny Depp is obviously not full-blooded American Indian, right, Native American. But he claims to have some Cherokee ancestry, right? And you know what? A lot of people do out there. I mean, I think myself, I have like 1/87th, you know, some kind of Native American out there. Somewhere on my mother's side, there's some, you know. But, like, so at what point does it become not whitewashing? Like what? When you're half Native American, when you're like, you know, half Asian. Could I play an Asian guy? I'm half Asian, you know. Do I have to be 3/4 Asian? Like, you know, is it okay if one of my parents is not Asian and can I fit? You know, that's kind of like, or do I just have to look Asian? That's another thing. Like, apparently it's a big thing out in Hollywood where Asian actors get pissed if the wrong nationality plays them. So if a guy's playing a samurai but they get a Chinese actor, for example, that kind of thing. Or if a guy's playing, you know, the Chinese emperor and they get you know, an actor who's from the Philippines or something, right? Apparently that's like a big rub out there in the Asian acting community, and it's like, well, you know, and I can understand that because the implication there is that you all look the same. That's what they're basically saying. Like when you get a Chinese guy to play a Japanese character, it's like, well, he's Asian, just throw him in there. They all look, no one will tell the difference, right? I can see how that could piss people off. But at the same time, it's like, so do you have to like, you know, does that mean that you just don't have that character? You have to hunt down like an actor that has your specific ethnic background, you know, like let's say you're a Tamil, you know, whatever, from some island in the South Pacific. Like you have to find like an actor that actually comes from there in order to play it, you know, or when does it like become acceptable is what I'm saying. It seems like strides have been made in Hollywood in order to try to stop doing this. You know, you see this a lot from Marvel in the Marvel movies as an example. You know, they change the race of a lot of the supporting characters because in the comics, you know, the comics were all originally written in the 60s and 70s, and in the comics all of the main cast are all white, right? So in the movies they've tried to like kind of diversify a little bit, and that means that they've changed the race of some of the characters. For example, Heimdall in the Thor movie is black, right? It's not hard to see that there are no black Norse gods. Okay, all of the gods in Norse mythology and in the comics are white. Okay, so you know, but you can get away with that. I mean, people were cool with that. Another example is in Doctor Strange as well. Baron Mordo is played by a black person. You know, where in the comics he's white. In the Fantastic Four movie that came out, the one that, you know, bombed, Johnny Storm was played by a black person. If you're really a purist when it comes to whitewashing, wouldn't that kind of thing upset you also? Because you're casting people who are not of the correct race for the character, you know? So why, you know, so wouldn't you get mad at that? Wouldn't you be like, you know, why is Johnny Storm black, you know? Why is Kingpin in the stupid-ass Daredevil movie, why is he black? Why are they changing the race of characters, you know? And so why is it okay to go one way but not the other way? You know, why is it alright to cast white characters as minorities but not, you know, minorities as white characters? Why? It has something to do with the fucking ridiculous notions of power and class that social justice warriors talk about or whatever, you know, power plus privilege equals racism, which is bullshit. I've done videos on that in the past already, you know, or does it really more a notion of what fits the character best, you know? I think that's what it is, because it's fine in, as far as I can see, if you change the race of a character as long as the performance of the actor or actress that you get is really good and the character is written in a good way. And that seems to me to make up for it. So, for example, in the Ghost in the Shell movie, using that as an example, they address that. You know, actually, the character in the movie is Asian, right? And they put her in a white person android body, and they actually address that. They have her go and she finds her mother, and her mother is like Japanese, and it's like. And then through the movie, you realize why she's acting the way she is, because she's looking in the mirror and seeing a face that isn't hers. Right? I think that actually adds depth to the character. I think that makes it better than it would have been if it was, you know, you wouldn't have that kind of, because like I said in that review, the character of Major, you know, the Major has extreme body dysmorphia because of this. You know, she feels like she's wearing a suit, right? And that's like, I think that actually adds to it. That makes it, you know, that adds another dimension that you don't even get in the manga, right? So, anyway, to conclude here, it just seems to me that, you know, it's still a problem, right? You still see, more so in movies, but it just seems to me that people only complain when the movie is like a bad movie. You know, like when somebody makes some piece of shit movie, they go, oh god, that movie sucked, it was horrible, the acting was dumb. Oh, and by the way, the main guy was supposed to be like, you know, Latino, and it's like being played by a white guy. And they use it just as another reason to hate a movie that they already don't like. Whereas if it's something that's really good, like Argo, and it goes on to win Best Picture, no one even brings it up. That's just what it seems to be, you know, and it's like, you know, let's just be a little consistent, and maybe you don't need to, like, I don't know, maybe your enjoyment of a movie shouldn't be based on the race of the actors. Let me put it that way. Anyway, adios, folks.